In any case, we're joined now for the entire, well, not the entire first hour because she missed a minute. Most of the first hour by Attorney General Andrea Campbell.
Listen to you.
She's here to take our questions. That's her loss, don't you think? And yours. You can reach us by phone or text at 877-301-8970. Or if you're at the library, you can step up to the mic. Our colleague Hannah, raise your hand, Hannah. That would be Hannah, our colleague. If you go to Hannah and fill out a little form or some such thing, I don't know what you do. Whatever you do, you talk to Hannah. And if it goes well over there, you get to ask a question directly to the Attorney General. Hello, Attorney General. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Very
Hello,
nice
everyone.
to see you.
Yeah, we got stuck behind a truck.
We've heard that before.
Double parking.
I'll tell you.
There you go.
The city needs to enforce
You don't put
that.
the siren
City
on or
needs to enforce
something,
that.
or what?
We try not to do that.
By the way, speaking of that,
right,
we're going
you
to
get in trouble
clarify.
for doing that,
we are
right?
going to clarify today. We discussed this with Mayor Wu, Governor Healy. We are going to clarify it today with the former Secretary of Transportation, Jim Aloisi, and the head of Livable Streets, Stacey Thompson. Can you or can you not legally drive in a bus-only lane in Massachusetts? Do you know the answer?
Can you? That's a good question. I'm assuming it's
Aren't you
no.
really Attorney
Don't worry,
General,
but
right?
nobody knows
Hey,
the
I
answer.
don't know everything. Anyone who pretends that
Yeah.
they know everything is lying to you.
So you should listen at 12:30 or 1 o'clock, and you can
Yeah,
find out
exactly.
what the answer
No
is.
one knows, but
I would
I do it.
assume no.
Well,
But then also if you think about it, if there's no bus in sight.
exactly.
No.
You're with me, Attorney
I'm just
General
saying.
Campbell.
Can we save that
exactly.
tape
The
for-
buses come every 20
But I said,
minutes.
but if the law says otherwise, obviously do not
Okay.
go
Nice
into
try
that
there,
lane.
Attorney
Yeah.
But I'm
General.
just saying.
It's good
Exactly.
to see you.
Or if it's somewhere in the gray area, you know my
Okay,
position.
fine.
Exactly, exactly. So anyway, we're beginning now, we're not?
We are.
Yes, okay, so Attorney General Campbell, we're waiting any second now, certainly this week, for the Supreme Court to come down with a decision on affirmative action. And people are very, very pessimistic about this. They think the Supreme Court is going to get rid of affirmative action, widely seen as, I think, a disaster for diversity in campuses. But leading up to that, they've done a bunch of decisions, three decisions that have strengthened people of color in terms of voting rights and overruled states that are trying to make these ridiculous laws about voting
That's right.
above the federal government. So it seems like there's something weird there. I mean, what do you make of this?
Well, we should make clear the third of those decisions was rejection of the state legislature
Right.
theory this morning.
That's right,
Where
which
they
is a
could
big
essentially overrule the state courts.
That's right, which
Yeah.
is a big case, and folks should follow that. I think many of us have been surprised by those decisions, but we
agree.
have welcomed them. And always give credit where credit's due. The Supreme Court has gotten it right and has done it in a bipartisan effort, obviously given how the justices are appointed, which is a big deal. So I say all that to say we're continuing to follow each decision closely. So obviously we're following the affirmative action case, everything related to student debt. And we won't know what steps we'll need to take until we get that decision in its completion. And we'll follow those closely and do the work that needs to be done. I will say, just 2 points, because this came up yesterday in the conversation with someone. On the student debt issues, we have a whole team in the office every single day working hard with constituents, putting money back into their pockets, but particularly educating them on all of the initiatives, all of the programming, all of the debt relief programs they may be eligible for, including some of the recent changes. And we're putting hundreds of thousands of dollars back into the pockets of parents, students, graduates. So if folks have questions, I encourage them to call the office to engage with us on a constituent by constituent basis with respect to any student debt relief questions.
How about I'm operating under the assumption that the Supreme Court is saving the worst for last. They adjourn in a few days. Affirmative action, student loan forgiveness is still there. A few other kinds of cases.
Well, Andrew Cabral and Michael Curry both had a similar theory, did they not?
Why don't you explain it?
Well, their theory was basically that when half the country, or maybe more, is calling them a bunch of racists when they get rid of affirmative action, that they could say, well, no, we're not, because we did these other things, affirming voting.
Possibly.
Yeah. Do you think there's any credence to that? That's what...
Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, we're waiting, I'm not anxiously, but we're waiting like everyone else. We're following all the decisions. And I've just been reminding folks, though, we don't want folks to enter a space of fear. We are already mobilizing with our higher ed institutions here in Massachusetts, the governor's office, the executive office of education. Everyone's coming to the table to proactively be thinking about how we continue to diversify our institutions and to do that in such a way that it creates the diversity we need. So more to come on that, and the direction that the court ultimately decides to go will dictate what steps we take.
But what, realistically speaking, and by the way, our number, my apologies, is 877-301-8970. You can text the Attorney General or call her at 877-301.
But you can't text me directly,
What's
but
that?
someone is getting it and passing on that text.
301-8970. We'll give you a cell phone a little later in the hour. In all seriousness, we've heard a lot of, the governor was here the other day, talked about the commission she put together, a pretty broad spectrum of people to look at affirmative action issues, particularly if the court turns it down. Michael Curry from the National Board of the NAACP and obviously the League of Community Health Centers. I have to be honest, I haven't heard one credible argument, and I want to hear it. Lee Pelton the other day from the Boston Foundation about okay, fine, some universities get rid of legacy admissions, which for the most, you went to Princeton, obviously, the elite universities, that's where mostly older white people's kids get in. That would help balancing, but on the margins, maybe zip codes, indirection. But have you heard something that in your mind comes anywhere close to replacing what affirmative action is a factor, constitutionally permissible, at least until the end of this week, replacing that would possibly do?
I think it would be a setback, of course, and I do not want the court to go in that direction. I also went to UCLA Law School. This was post-Prop 209, and they saw the numbers drastically decrease when it came to students of color at UCLA. In the class before me, there were, I think, 6 black students, 1 black female in the entire UCLA Law School class. This was post-Prop 209. Yeah. But I like to think that we could, whether it's California or other places, hopefully learn some lessons of what tools are available to us. But that's what we're actively looking at now. But I say no fear just yet because we don't know what the Supreme Court is ultimately going to do. They could tweak it in such a way that it still allows us to be aggressive in certain aspects, to be able to create that diversity that we want to see, that we know is tremendously important to everybody when you go to an institution of higher learning, or any institution for that matter. And I will also just add, even with certain policies in place, including affirmative action, other things, we still, in our office, and I'm really proud of the team every single day, are constantly thinking about how we still diversify institutions, how we still make sure they're representative of the communities we serve, not just by race, also by geographic region, disability, other demographics as well. That's ongoing work, coupled with doing away with racial disparities that we know exist in every system. That I want to see more intentionality from us on, because even as we sit here following the Supreme Court, we know racial disparities still exist in every system. The question I have and the team is working is, what are we doing about that?
Fair enough. Let's take some calls. Doug in Dorchester, you're first. You're on with the
Dorchester.
Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell. Hey, Doug. Doug.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
You're on. Yep. Take it away.
Hi. Thank you.
Sure.
So my brother unfortunately died of COVID in November of 2021. He was only 47 years old, and he had fallen victim to all the misinformation out there. He just really drank it up. And at that time, vaccines had been widely available. At that time, he was not vaccinated, and I'm wondering why I don't hear anything about anyone being held accountable, because I think so many people spread misinformation about COVID and vaccines, and they did it really just to make money. And when I hear the victims of the fentanyl crisis and all of these other situations who eventually get justice, but there's no discussion at all about all the people who needlessly died because of the politically motivated or frankly financially motivated misinformation that was spread. I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts on that.
First of all, thank you, Doug, for calling in, and of course, sorry to hear about your brother. I think there is some conversation, but it could be a lot more. In our office, we are having a lot of conversation, but also active investigations in the context of mainly elders in nursing homes or long-term care facilities where COVID was at play, but also certain decisions were made by management or those in leadership or some type of supervisory roles within these institutions. And our goal, particularly through our Medicaid fraud unit, is to hold those folks accountable. And some of these cases are quite horrific, sometimes in the context of COVID, sometimes not. So more to come. I think there's a discussion that we need to continue to have. I also know as we look at just fraud and other things in the COVID context, which connects to some misinformation, it's something that we can, of course, continue to discuss as a team.
You know, 877-301-8970, I don't know if you were touching upon it there. The criminal charges against the 2 leaders of the Holyoke Soldiers Home that had originally been dismissed have been reinstated. What's the status of that? When's the next step in that legal procedure?
So ongoing, I have to sort of circle back on that. I will tell you, we celebrated that. That is a huge decision, because it's one thing to go after folks who, I'll put this in quotes, were directly involved on the scene. Nurses or providers within, say, a long-term care facility or a nursing home, they are directed in many instances by the folks who own those facilities. And sometimes the owners don't live here. It can be really difficult to find out who owns these institutions. And so the Medicaid fraud unit, along with our healthcare bureau, are actively working every single day to hold all stakeholders accountable, especially in cases that lead to death. The other 2 pieces that are important, fighting like hell at the legislature. We had some successes there in legislative victories that allow us to extend the amount of time we can investigate these cases, increase the amount of penalties, which is still a major concern, and transparency, so working with the federal government on actually exposing who owns these care facilities. So the team is working hard, more to come.
877-301-8970 to text or call directly to the Attorney General.
Attorney General Campbell, I know you co-led this group of 15 state attorneys general regarding Target, and it's seeming to, it's getting rid of some of its Pride merchandise after there were people that were threatening them and their employees. Tell us what's going on with that.
I just realized there's like 1 million young people outside taking photos with the cameras. So
Hi.
Hello.
I don't know if you know
Good
the
to see
Attorney
all of
General
you.
is here. Maybe
Wow.
But the
that's
young people are here, which is
a bunch
awesome.
of aspiring photographers.
Apparently.
I guess. Yeah, they've all got cameras.
Apparently. So hello to them. Youth engagement is critical. Yes, so I actually listening to all of you, this show and some other commentary at the beginning of Pride Month, the painful accounts of constituents all across Massachusetts who either identified or didn't as LGBTQ+, walked into a Target to buy merchandise to either celebrate their family member, celebrate a child, celebrate the month as an ally, you name it. And there was one story in particular of a woman who walked in to a store. She did identify as LGBTQ+, who picked up something, went to the cash register to purchase it, and was told by someone working at the store that, sorry, that's been recalled, you have to put it back. And then she explained she went to her car and just cried. And I said, that's ridiculous. There are some things Target does really well, and it works in partnership with a whole host of folks on a lot of issues, but this one I think they've gotten it wrong. And so met with and had a conversation with other AGs, but also Ellison in Minnesota, where Target is based. He immediately said, let's do this letter to call out Target, the CEO, to say you cannot back down when it comes to bullying and harassment by a fringe group of folks. If your employees are being harassed, we take that very seriously. Use our office, use our tools. We have a crim bureau, we have a civil rights division working hard. We will be happy to assist in that regard. And at the same time, keep your promise and your word, which is to put this merchandise out front and center for folks to be able to buy it and celebrate it. And they're not even all year round, 1 month out of the year. And so the response, we're waiting on a response, but the number of AGs that stepped up across the country is really remarkable. And so we're going to keep fighting in action, in letter, and also, of course, with the other tools that we have available to the office.
That's the voice of Andrea Campbell. She's the Attorney General of Massachusetts, here to take your questions for this hour. Molly, you're in West Newbury. You're on with the Attorney General Campbell. Welcome.
Good afternoon, or good morning. I'm calling in regards to the gentleman that's living in a fisherman's shack or whatever
great.
it's called on the Cape. Is that under your purview?
It's federal. It's a National Park
National
Service.
Park
Yeah.
Service, yeah.
But ask her anyway. I'd
Tell-
like
tell
to
her
ask
what
her
it is.
anyway.
Call the feds.
Yeah, tell her
ahead,
the
Molly.
situation, Molly.
Call the feds.
Are you
It's
familiar
not,
with the guy,
yes,
the
but it's-
77
it's
years?
not, yeah.
Go ahead, Molly.
Okay. Anyway, it is one of the saddest stories and an
I agree.
overreach that is beyond pale. This poor gentleman has been somehow willed this from a family member of the original owner, and the shacks are now
Yep.
being sold off by auction. he's not even able to participate in the auction, from what I understand. I understand that Elizabeth Warren and Markey are trying to assist, but I think the days are shrinking, and I think he's going to be evicted. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it's not a good fact pattern, but I will say, obviously, we work with the senators on a whole host of things, and I know their advocacy is fierce. Obviously, we're working with them right now on the right to repair issue, and so hopefully it gets to an outcome that is fair to the gentleman.
Yeah,
but it's not within
terrible.
our direct authority.
Molly, it's a horrible case, and I'm glad you brought it up.
I think there are 10,000 people who signed this change.org
Yeah.
petition.
Yeah, but I will
protest.
say, kudos to our senators who are working hard on a whole host of issues. I mentioned right to repair, but other issues as well, where if it's not within our direct authority or involves a federal agency, which can be difficult to navigate, they work really hard.
You know, Attorney General,
But it's beyond our control. It's the National Park Service.
Let's talk about right to repair, because many people do not like to take their cars to dealerships because it costs them an arm and a leg, and they want to go to their local mechanic. I have a great local mechanic that is really a reasonable guy. So tell us what's happened with the right to repair law, which people in the Commonwealth overwhelmingly wanted in a ballot question, right?
That's right. Millions of folks supported this law and this legal change, and kudos to them. It's saying, let's protect consumers and competition and price. And so this allows, if you have a car, to go to an independent car dealer to get your car repaired and not exclusively with the owner or manufacturer of your vehicle. The case has been going on for 2 years. I inherited this and immediately got into office, asked questions about where is it with respect to the case. 2 years, the judge hasn't made a decision, and he still hasn't. And so we pushed, and then we finally said, okay, well, we're not going to wait anymore. It's my job to enforce the laws, and we're going to enforce this one. And we started our enforcement, even sending out notices, and then in the last hour, NHTSA sent out a letter.
National Highway Transportation, whatever.
Safety
whatever.
Administration.
Okay, thank you, yeah.
God bless you both.
Got the story in front of me.
But sent out this letter to the manufacturers and then copied it to the court. I, like everyone else, was shocked, including the team, because they had an opportunity to weigh in over these years, including through the legal proceeding. And we just don't think, for one, we have questions about what informed that law, who were you in communication with, because you weren't in communication with me, but you were in communication with the manufacturers, so there's a lot of questions there. The other piece, and what process was utilized, but the other piece is, should we allow a letter where there is no process preempt a state law that was legally passed by millions of voters? And I think the answer is no. So we're going to fight like hell to protect consumers. And Senator Warren and Senator Markey have been incredible. They sent a very straight, direct letter to the administration. And this is where I have to call out, we have several bureaus in the office that do significant work. The Government Bureau, which you never really hear about because they represent state agencies, they are handling this, like they do other things, remarkably. And they have been on the front lines fighting for this, and they will continue to be. So we just had a meeting as a team. We're laying out all our options going forward, and we'll go from there.
So do you intend to implement the law as you intended prior to the letter?
That's our goal, but we also have a lot of questions for NHTSA. If there are safety concerns, what are they specifically? Are they insurmountable? And so there was very little factual detail in that letter. So we have calls into them. We obviously have our senator's letter, but we haven't gotten a response that's adequate. So we're waiting to hear. And then, of course, we have the judge who hasn't moved yet, but we hope that he'll do the right thing. Hopefully.
One more thing on this. I mean, their concern, I didn't read the whole letter, I just read summaries of it, is there's the cybersecurity issue. They say if the telematics, or whatever that term is, are available, then a rogue actor could steer a car remotely and potentially get it. And I assume you disagree with that conclusion, or you wouldn't. Is that correct?
I will say this. It's a concern that, frankly, in the last hour you bring up. This law was passed 2 years ago, so where have you been? Even during the ballot process when approving it. So that's one question. The second is, what specific concerns, and are they insurmountable?
Okay.
And we haven't heard a response to that. And they need a really robust response to those questions, because we then have to explain to the consumers in Massachusetts, millions, why we're not enforcing their will over the letter of a federal government.
Well, that's my last question on this, and then we'll get back to the calls at 877-301-8897 with Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General. I'm under the assumption, please correct me if I'm wrong, that a letter from NHTSA, if that's how you pronounce it, doesn't have the force of law. Is that correct so far?
It doesn't in the court proceeding, so this is why we're trying to figure out our next steps. But what the manufacturers are utilizing. And this is why this letter is so problematic, not just because of the lack of process and the lack of substance in it, and detail and factual detail, but the other piece that's really troubling is it gives the manufacturers a way out.
Yeah, but
they point to this letter and say, hey, the letter, which is a federal agency with safety concerns overseeing our work, essentially, preempts you.
Understand.
And so they have that, and it's a legitimate letter.
With all due respect, Attorney General, if it doesn't have the force of law, and it is the law in Massachusetts, as you said.
That's the question. That's the question.
What? As to whether or not it does have the force of law?
Whether or not that can be allowed to preempt our state law.
So
so it's not a black and white. It's not a black and white response.
So you haven't reached a conclusion yet as to whether or not that invalidates, the letter alone invalidates the state law. Is that correct?
So where we are is evaluating all of our options going forward. What I will say is I do not think the law should be allowed. The letter should be allowed to preempt the will of the voters in the right to repair law. But we have to go into a court and explain that using case law and certain provisions. There's still more research to do there because it is a federal agency where we have to follow some of their guidelines when it comes to the safety of our vehicles, which we take very seriously. So it's not a black and white space. On the one hand, we want to respect their authority in the sense of we don't want unsafe cars on the road. On the other hand, we also want to respect the will of voters. So they have put us in a really tricky position. And what's really frustrating, they did it without calling us, without engaging us. But that's the question for the federal judge. So that's why we want him to move on this case.
By the way, we should also say that to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, if I remember, the opposition to this made the exact same argument NHTSA is making, and the voters rejected it for whatever it's worth.
So more to come on that. But our job is to protect the consumers, protect their pocketbooks or wallets, and to make sure that we're doing that going forward is a priority for the office.
Got it.
Miriam from Watertown, you're on with the Attorney General Andrea Campbell. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Miriam.
Marianne or Miriam?
Hi.
Miriam, excuse me. Miriam.
Hi, Miriam.
Hi, I've been either ripped off by a contractor or scammed by people who are posing as a contractor. They took a deposit, started the work, never finished, took the money and ran. It's been 22 days. I've left 7 voicemails at the AG's office, the Consumer Affairs Division, 2 emails, and I've gotten no callback, no support. I finally had to get my state rep involved, and I got a message today that I'll be getting a call later, but I'm both frustrated by the lack of support and also really upset about being scammed and out of a lot of money. I need help. What do I do?
So, Miriam, you just wait on the line. Lauren, who's with me here, you obviously can't see her. She's sitting next to me. We'll follow up with you, and we will get on the response. So just stay on the line, please.
Miriam, stay there, and one of our producers will get your contact info and give it to the Attorney General's office. Thank you for your call, and what a nightmare.
We'll follow up.
Speaking of scams, we had these great kids and their mentor from the Hyde Square project, I think it's called.
Hyde Square Task Force.
Oh,
Task
yes,
Force.
they're awesome.
They did this little sleuthing, and they found out that they went to their Stop and Shop in their JP neighborhood, Jamaica Plain neighborhood, and compared prices with the Dedham Stop and Shop, and found out that over the year, if they bought these certain items at this Dedham, at their own neighborhood Stop and Shop, they'd be paying a little bit more than $2,000 more a year. And I don't know if there's anything that the Attorney General can do about that, if there's a reason that Stop and Shop could justify that kind of price differential or not.
Did you meet with them, by the way? You were
yes, we did.
Oh, you did?
We did.
Oh,
and they're amazing.
talk about great
and it was a
kids.
full-on team response. I'm going to highlight another bureau. So the PPAB, which is our largest bureau, which does a lot of our consumer work, also has a civil rights division.
Do you know what that stands for?
Public Protection Advocacy Bureau.
Thank you very much.
If I didn't know my own bureau, I'd be in trouble. And they're amazing. And so last time I was here, I was highlighting all the cases where they're putting money back into the pockets of workers and so many others. So Cindy Mark, who leads PPAB, we had a full-on meeting with the youth, as well as Selena, who is their executive director, who I've worked with in the past. And right now we're exploring how we work with them on a whole host of issues. following their lead because we want them obviously to empower it. But there's more to look into here, we think, and so we'll stay in touch with them and move forward.
Are there potential violations of law here? I mean,
Potentially. And so if anything, we were meeting with them to get their findings, to talk through their findings, their facts, et cetera, and think creatively about all the ways we could proceed together on this issue. And kudos to them. I said at the beginning of that meeting, just extending gratitude. You often hear young people aren't engaged, young people aren't doing this, young people this. They are engaged. And they're doing a lot of things in their community. We don't always get the press coverage of it, but they are. And they're in the context of this, environmental justice issues, gun violence, you name it. And so it was really remarkable to see. So we'll stay in touch with them.
On that note, not only did the Globe do a great story, Marjorie and Jared had the kids on the other day. And this afternoon in the 1 o'clock hour, we have 2 students from something called the PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs. They're high school kids who did brilliant reports in a week. And one of them is about the Stop and Shop thing, so stick around for them.
Awesome.
They're terrific.
I just have to interject for a second, because I've been getting emails, text messages about this, and Jamie, our producer, just gave me the scoop. Last Friday, we had a pigeon flying around here during the entire show. Yeah, and everybody was kind of upset about it. First of all, they didn't want to get pooped on by the pigeon, but it was
Don't they say that's good luck?
Is it good luck?
I don't know. Someone said
Why
that
don't you
once.
try it then?
I don't
Tell
know.
us.
When it happened, someone said, it's good luck. I said, I don't know, but there's poop on me.
But in any case, Jamie has just informed us that the pigeon was caught last Friday night by one of the intrepid workers at the Newsfeed Cafe and returned back to nature.
Oh, wonderful.
So a happy ending for the pigeon that was flying around outside here for hours.
Thank you to whoever took care of that.
Okay. Jelly from Wells, thank you for calling. You're on with Attorney General Andrea Campbell.
Hey there.
Hi, thank you. Jim and Marjorie, I usually call in from Russell, but today I'm in Wales.
Okay.
Nice to have you.
Yeah. Madam Attorney General, I'm wondering, as we're seeing attacks on the LGBTQ plus community, there's, legislative attacks across the nation when it comes to abortion rights, when it comes to, so many things. I'm wondering if the Attorney General's office could offer some type of public forum or info session, not only for residents in Massachusetts, especially young people in Massachusetts, but as well as in other states like Florida, like Texas, like Tennessee, for people just to know their federal and statewide legal rights for when they do face issues of discrimination, or just so that they know how they're protected and how they can correctly handle it under the law.
That's a great
Thank you,
question. And we mentioned the Target letter earlier, which is one small piece of our advocacy. Some of it, of course, is litigation and filing briefs to protect the rights of folks, not just in Massachusetts, but across the country, in the context of access to reproductive health care, gender-affirming care as well. We're also about to set up a reproductive justice unit, which is really important. And that will be a new unit in the office to bring all of these issues together so they're not so siloed because they are intersectional. We also have the abortion hotline. So I was actually just with Reproductive Equity Now, the ACLU, various law firms on a pro bono basis. We've all come together to set up this hotline, which is 833-309-6301. And this is free and confidential, and actually a space to get a lot of information on questions related to reproductive rights, health care, et cetera, and then to be appropriately directed if that hotline cannot answer the question. So I'm encouraging folks to continue to utilize that line. And also folks from other states are doing the same. And then, of course, you can always call our office or connect with us online as well. But we're thinking creatively about how we do some of these Know Your Rights. The hotline was the best way because it was free and confidential. So if you needed to share more details, that was really important as we think about ways to put more informational things on the website.
Can you give the number one more time before we take a break?
833-309-6301.
Thank you very much. Marjorie, we've got to take a break.
Oh, we have to take a break. Oh, before we go to the break, Jim Browdy's name is Jim Spencer Browdy.
Let's not do this.
But he never uses his middle name.
Spencer?
Spencer.
That's nice.
Okay,
He thinks it's an
Someone said
embarrassing
that's a
middle
strong
name.
name.
Thank you, as opposed
And
to Jim.
I have noticed you have a lovely middle name, which
Yes,
I know
I do.
now is Joy. But I didn't see it during the campaign. I've just seen it since you've been the Attorney General.
Yeah.
So you were hiding the joy under wraps until
No,
you
I'm
got
always
elect-
carrying the joy everywhere I go.
Okay.
And it's after my biological mom, who you know is deceased.
Yes.
And her middle name was Joy. And so that's where I get it. And maybe that explains some of my inner being, but that's how I choose to live in the world even when it gets dark. I'm also very faith-driven, as you know, and I
Yes,
speak to that
I
and
do.
the power of prayer
Yep.
and all of that. You just have to have a foundation, and joy is definitely one of them. It's hard to get away from.
But I didn't see it before I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's new, isn't
Well,
it? So why did you make the decision?
Part of it was when I was asked to put my name, there were a lot of folks that you need to put your full name because
Yeah.
the middle name Joy characterizes how you show up in the world, how you be, as my uncle would like to say. And it means something at a bigger level because of the connection to my biological mom, who I never knew.
Right.
So it really is deep, and so it's been welcomed and it's great. Thank you. And Spencer's nice too.
Don't have to say it again.
It is.
By the way, before we
I
take
don't know
a
if it's
break,
as nice as Joy.
we
Not
should
as
have
nice as
recognized
Joy. No, it isn't.
Fritz is the great
Yeah,
guy who's
Fritz.
not out there right now.
We have
at
to
the
find
New
out how
Street
he
Cafe.
caught the pigeon.
Oh,
captured
too.
thank
the
you,
pigeon.
Fritz.
We have
Fritz,
a
you're
beautiful
great one.
picture of Fritz holding the pigeon in his
He's a great
hands
guy.
before he set it free, so we'll have to get the scoop
We gotta
on
take a
how
break.
Fritz managed that.
Thank
But
you.
right now, we're talking to the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We're going to be talking with her to the top of the hour. You can reach her at 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming online at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I am James Spencer Browdy. She is Marjorie Manning Egan. We're joined by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Joy Campbell. She is with us till it's never happening again. At least the first two are not happening again. She's with us till the top of the hour. You can call her or text her at 877-301-8970. And don't be shy in the library. If you've got a question, go over to Hannah and ask the damn question. So can I ask you a question before we get, you were with John Keller, our buddy on CBS the other day. You're talking about creating a police accountability unit. You use the expression, I want to focus on individual police officers, that sort of thing. We've asked Mayor Wu this a lot. There's a guy by the name of Pepper Jack Danilecki who has had 39 charges, a quarter of which were about excessive force through the years. He's been disciplined, in quotes, in mild fashion, never for the excessive force. He was accused of excessive force 4 years ago in 2019. There is still no resolution. And this is the guy, has the name Pepper Jack because of how he treated protesters. You all read about it and saw about it before. 4 years, he is still out on the streets, and people are supposed to trust in Boston that he is somebody who will safeguard you rather than attack you. John Early, we read the other day, a bunch of years ago, I think he's a lieutenant, in a crash scene, he has open beers, he's fired, an arbitrator puts him back in place, now he's got a DUI charge against him, etc. It seems, I think I speak for Marjorie, that justice within the police department, at least in Boston, moves insanely slowly, and essentially what we are doing by allowing it to move slowly is basically asking the public to trust people, as I said a minute ago, who have been determined not to be trustworthy. Is there a role for you, or is this purely an intra-community thing in play? I didn't mean to just single out Boston, but those are two high-profile examples. Yep. It's like the Danilecki case. Do you have any role to play in that?
First of all, there is a significant role for the AG's office to play, and I think this is an area people often say, well, where you build on the legacy of the AGs who came before. What are the new issues and what will you be taking on outside of protecting our elders and establishing an elder justice unit, police accountability and gun violence. So we have already posted for these positions a police accountability unit and a gun violence prevention unit. We were actively interviewing some incredible candidates to lead that work. This will be new. I name both because they go hand in hand because it's about trust. It's about trust between law enforcement and the public, and vice versa. You cannot be effective. And I've never been an officer, but I talk to them frequently and have a state police unit within the office. You cannot be effective in your job if there is no trust between the community and police. And there are several solutions at how to build that trust. Diversifying your police departments, certain tools, body cameras, civilian review boards, or oversights. But the Post has a huge role to play in this.
That was the thing created under criminal justice reform.
Right, and the Post Commission, so the Post Commission, we view, and we stay in contact with them, and we're pushing them and working in collaboration, is to take on those individual officer cases, to look at does the misconduct rise to a level where someone should be decertified to never work in law enforcement ever again?
Can they do that even before there's a finding by the local?
That's the part they're figuring out, but we're pushing them to be more involved because they're up here at the state level, I think, where there's less conflict of interest, maybe other reasons why they should play that role, and why they need maybe more resources to be able to do that. They have a lot on their plate to get off the ground. Where I see the police accountability unit showing up is on the systemic issues. So if we look at a department in a municipality, how many officers have abuse of power, excessive force, what's going on there? Or do we have districts, for example, where officers are having sexual relationships with people? What is going on there? So the systemic issues is what this unit would be tasked with addressing. And let me tell you, we will do it not only with integrity and with law enforcement, but with a sense of urgency. It shouldn't take that long. It shouldn't take that long.
So
and I also want to give credit, you know, Mayor Wu and others, and the new commissioner, obviously at BPD, they're working really hard. Part of it is also the collective bargaining agreement. When I was on the city council, was in the weeds on that, limitations and how you can discipline. When I was fighting to create the Civilian Review Board, or the OPAT, Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, a lot of the sticking points were on who can discipline, who can fire. And so they're working really hard to address those issues, and there is absolutely a role that we will play, and especially when we get this unit off the ground.
So do you, just briefly, like in the case of Danileki, where the incident happened 4 years ago, is that something where you think by the way, investigators determined, reports the Globe, that Danileki had violated the department's use of force guidelines and lied, and still nothing
And this is where I think Post has to get involved.
They should get involved,
Absolutely.
even though it's within the borders of Baltimore.
Absolutely, that's what Post is there for. And we've been stressing the individual officer cases. We don't have the manpower. If we were to do this, my whole crim bureau would go underwater because they just don't have enough manpower or women power. You know, my crim bureau is led by 2 women. Just have to name that. And I just have to give a shout out to Jen Carter because I am, you know, naming different bureaus in the office. The crim bureau is one of them, and they are investigating all types of cases and working with the district attorneys. We just had a victory in Barnstable related to domestic violence case where we took over that case because of a conflict of interest. So we're working in collaboration every single day. So I have to give them a shout out.
Conflict of interest between someone in law enforcement, someone in the DA's office?
Someone in the DA's office. So sometimes they will reach out to our office for support where we can take on some cases. In this particular case, we did, and we got a successful victory in a domestic violence case.
You know, I was surprised, maybe I'm naive, I was surprised to learn that in the last 3 years, your Office of Fair Labor Division cited 127 employers for violating Massachusetts child labor laws, and it's often kids who are from immigrant families or kids of color. So what's going on?
So I was just saying, let me get you this number because we held a conference on this, and so you cited the number of employers, but the penalties, the citations we issued were close to $1.5 million. And so the Fair Labor Division, which is under PPAB, and Lauren runs it and it has an incredible team, they are hard at work every day doing trainings, know your rights, not just for workers, but also for employers. And there are some, of course, employers who follow all the rules, who we should be giving a gold star to. But they are also going after those folks who not only violate the benefits and work in the laws for our adult workers, but also our children. And if you read the New York Times articles recently with respect to child labor violations in this country, they are horrific, and they usually target poor kids or immigrant kids. And they're horrific. And if you haven't read it, I would encourage everyone to pull up that New York Times article because it is awful to think that that happens here in our country. And so the question I had for the team is, what about in Massachusetts? And we had some ongoing investigations going on. We've issued citations. We've gotten some resources back to be able to make, of course, folks whole, but also to bring certain employers into compliance, to allow young people who want to work to continue to be able to work, but to say they can, you know, they're limited in terms of hours, et cetera. So we encourage folks to look at our website. We've put a lot of information on the website. Our Children's Justice Unit even sent out this information to school superintendents. This was right before the summer break, so educators would be aware of these rights and these laws and could educate their students and their parents and caregivers. So we encourage folks to continue to stay in touch with our office on anything they think is related to child labor or workplace violations.
That's Andrea Campbell. She's the Attorney General. She's with us till the top of the hour. Stephanie in Easton, you're on with Attorney General Campbell.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to talk with you. I've been listening for a very long time, and I'm so glad that I'm able to get on. A little bit nervous. So I'm just wondering, I have been trying everywhere to find a lawyer for my brother. He doesn't have any money, and looking for somebody that does pro bono work. And it seems like every place that I call to say that they do, they go, yes, and we charge by the hour. So I wasn't sure if the Attorney General could help me out, maybe finding something for someone who is in his spot that could really use some help.
Yes, if you stay on the line, Stephanie, Lauren from my team will connect with you, and there are a lot of great organizations, including even some firms that take on pro bono cases depending on the fact pattern, et cetera. So please stay on the line, and we can see what resources are available.
Stephanie, don't go away.
You used to be with legal services. I guess they're overwhelmed, legal services.
They are not.
In many ways, they are. I will say, we're just proud we did a letter jointly, actually, 2 Democratic AGs, including me, and 2 Republican AGs came together along with other AGs to push during the budget process at the federal level for more resources in terms of legal aid organizations. We're doing the same here in Massachusetts. These organizations are critical. We don't provide direct legal services to folks through the AG's office, direct representation. We cannot. We can protect the consumer. We have certain tools in our toolkit, but when it comes to sometimes being able to actually get someone a lawyer, we go to these organizations who are partners in the work, and they need resources. They need folks to volunteer their time. They need folks to show up. They're critical.
By the way, there's some great talk radio hosts who were wonderful young legal services lawyers many years ago.
Why don't you brag
Spencer.
Yeah, you can brag to the Attorney General about how you formed the union there.
Whatever.
What a great job you
know,
did. It was legendary, you know.
There's
legendary.
Okay, I shouldn't have brought it up. Okay. Attorney General, there's a wonderful editorial, I think, in the Globe in the last couple of days. Invading Your Privacy, there's an app for that. And they're talking about these GPS tracking apps and the danger, I think everybody listening knows, for the violent end, the extreme end of the anti-abortion, anti-choice front, able to track to a clinic. Stalkers, individual stalkers can do this kind of thing. And there are a bunch of states, apparently 10, according to the Globe, that have done some data privacy legislation. Some are proposing an actual ban on this thing. The Globe seems to be saying that obtaining the consent of an individual, an opt-out kind of thing, is the way to go. I'm assuming the issue matters a lot to you.
Absolutely.
Where are you and what Beacon Hill legislatively should do on this front?
So, I mean, we're following, and I know Senator Cream has a bill. Kate Lippert-Garbadian also has a bill. So there are different moving pieces and parts. We have a data privacy division within the office that is hard at work, to say the least. And so anytime you have a phone with apps, I just came back from a conference where most of the substantive panels were on data, AI, emerging technologies. Anytime you have an app on your phone or anything on your phone, it's data. It's collecting data. The question is, what are they doing with it? And what are you agreeing to or not? And who reads the fine print and understands that? It is not consumer friendly. One of the folks on the panel actually said that. And he worked at Microsoft, which is here, and said, you know, we are working really hard, but no one reads it. And so some of these bills will be critical. So we're actively reviewing them to figure out what is the best way to go.
But at minimum, I assume, I know you're studying.
Opt-out is one solution.
But at minimum, there should be an affirmative opt-out, and then maybe you build one. Is there any argument against having an opt-out?
I don't think so. And I will tell you what was really enlightening to me as I immersed myself in the technology space, particularly AI and emerging technologies. This is new to me. I don't come from a technological background. But what was helpful to me, listening to some folks on this panel who work, say, in the industry, who work for folks who are creating this technology, they too agree. As we craft these provisions where you just click a box, that's not user-friendly. You don't understand what you're clicking. Opt-out provisions being an effective tool for folks. So we're following all of that, and we'll have more, and there will be more to come on that as we proceed.
You know, we have a text.
And so I stress that because it's coming up in the reproductive justice conversation in terms of targeting patient providers. But it's coming up in every conversation, particularly as you do more on your phone, including the financial transactions that you use, et cetera. So more to come.
You know, we have a text from Pat in Boston regarding that data breach at Harvard Pilgrim.
Oh, yes.
And Pat, I don't know if it's a male Pat or a female Pat, but in any case, this person wants to know, it seems that when this happens, businesses can simply offer 2 years of credit monitoring and be finished with any responsibility. Are there other steps that could and should be taken to prevent and respond to a data breach? And that did happen at Harvard Pilgrim, people's personal medical information.
Including some folks right in our AG's office.
Yeah.
Who were under that particular healthcare plan. So that is a major issue, to say the least. We're actively working with constituents every single day to make sure they're getting all of those tools in the immediate. Phase 2 is really looking at the policy and legislative changes we need to make so that folks feel protected. We are also, of course, staying in touch with the company in terms of other things they need to be responding to in a quicker manner. And this also brings up, this is in the context of, point 32. I think I'm saying that right. Health. Point 30. I was supposed to say 32 point. Point 32 health. But there's also
right.
But there's also Compass Medical. And I got to give a shout out. I'm going to give shout outs to my entire team
Just
today.
go right ahead.
But the Healthcare Fair Competition Bureau is quite large, but they are in the weeds when it comes to these cases. So whether it's a data breach case, I encourage folks to reach out to us. We are on that. And then Compass Medical, which is still at the top of our list. In our phase 1 is responding to the hundreds of calls we are getting, not just from patients, also providers who are not paid, who were also unaware of the abrupt closure that was going to come, and then patients who still can't get access to their medical records, still can't transition to a new provider. We are in the weeds on this, and so much so, as they go through their bankruptcy process, we are working to advocate for folks and to be at that table to push them to work quicker.
Explain to that, if people have forgotten, they just shut down and people
they just
had
shut
no
down.
notice. Yeah.
Which is just absolutely unacceptable. I mean, you think about it. You went to an appointment on Monday. You didn't know that you were closing on Tuesday, and I learned through the news or through some posts you put on your website. That's unacceptable. And so the phase 2 piece is us then looking at, once we get through the constituent cases and get people on with a new provider, get them their records or prescriptions. Phase 2, and hold them accountable through this bankruptcy process, but phase 2 is looking at the policy changes. If Brigham and Women's close, you just can't do that under our existing laws and regs, but certain providers can. And so the question is, what do we need to change on the policy front to not allow that to happen again? Because it really is sad and unfortunate, and of course threatens lives in many ways.
Now, we only have a minute left. Do you want to name every other person in the Attorney General's office in the next minute? Would you like to do
yes,
that?
Our Environmental Bureau. So, run by Rich. You need to know Rich and Turner. So, and I name that. There's 6 bureaus. One's the Executive Bureau, but there's these 5 bureaus that cover, when you think about healthcare, consumer protection, the Gov Bureau representing state agencies and representing right to repair, EEB, just yesterday, pushing, improving our standards when it comes to admissions from power plants. And then the Crim Bureau, taking on cases, domestic violence, human trafficking, you name it. I stress all that because I do not do this work by myself. It's a public law firm, your law firm, of close to 600 people, staff and lawyers, who work really hard. We are hiring like crazy because we are understaffed. And we have some great positions, so we're encouraging folks to apply. But they work really hard, and they're dedicated and in this work for all the right reason. And as you know, when you're in public service, you often are underpaid. And I was at the State House advocating for our budget because many of these lawyers are underpaid compared to even their state counterparts or the DA's offices. So I always have to give them credit because they work really hard.
Well, you do it quite well, by the way.
And then Lauren, of course, who's here.
Okay, let's mention Lauren.
Her and her team.
Okay.
They do calls. Think about this. Lauren and her team are sometimes on the phone 5 hours.
They
Yeah.
are?
Right? Taking your calls. You call a hotline, someone actually picking up to direct you to the appropriate place.
I have very bad news. We're out of time.
Okay.
You can't thank
I'll be back
anybody
next
else.
month, and I'll keep thanking
everyone
everyone. And then I
yes.
have to give a shout out, Molly.
Oh my God.
Molly, who is sitting here.
Hi, Molly.
Who is the deputy comms, who was press secretary. It's her birthday today.
Oh,
Happy
Molly.
And she's here at work. So happy birthday to Molly.
Can we cancel the next segment so we can thank a few more people?
Yes,
in
we
the Attorney
need to
General's
cancel the
office?
next segment. I have to give a shout out to Jamie, too, who lost his bird, Lucy. We love you, Jamie.
Who's Jamie?
Jamie's my chief of staff,
Oh,
and he loves birds. He
lost
said the bird is
Lucy?
good luck.
Oh.
He lost
Good
his bird, Lucy.
Okay.
Okay, well, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you.
It's
Thank
great
you.
to
very
see you
much.
both.
We'll see
Thank you
next
for
month.
having me.
Attorney General Andrea
Attorney
Campbell.
General Andrea